Hey YouTube, it's League Turnover Day. I did top Great League teams this morning with a very new updated PVPoke rankings coming from the beginning of the season to now. So I want to do the same thing for Ultra League, but if you look at what you've seen here and what you saw early in this season, there actually is not a ton of change. And I think it's because, I think it's a couple things. I think one, the Great League meta will fluctuate a bit more because the majority of people are playing the Great League. So they're testing out all these new Pokemon, and then some Pokemon will, because a lot of people are using these Pokemon, other Pokemon will rise, other Pokemon will fall, stuff like that. In Ultra League, it's a little more set, right? We kind of know what the meta is because it's been the meta for many seasons, right? Just looking at just Registeel at the top, Giratina up there, Cresselia, Pidgeot to a certain extent, Virizion, Tapu Fini, Cobalion, Swampert. These are not new Pokemon. These are Pokemon that just have dominated the Ultra League for a long time now. There's other Pokemon that at the beginning of the season all got bumped, and they are up on this list. Poliwrath, Talonflame, those are the ones that got buffed. So they sort of rightfully jumped up. I've got a team with Poliwrath because I tested it out and it is very strong in the Ultra League. In fact, I would go as far as to say it's probably one of the top three best safe swaps in Ultra League. Very strong Pokemon. So Poliwrath definitely one worth investing in if you don't have. And then Talonflame. Talonflame was always decent in the Ultra League. I think access like a buffed Incinerate plus Fly definitely puts it in the top. I don't know if I'm sold on top 20. It's definitely like a top like 30 Pokemon. I wouldn't put it super far down. But you know, between like the Giratina, a lot of water on here. You see like Swampert, Tapu, Pelipper, Lantern. Like there's a lot of things that can answer Talonflame. So that's kind of why I'm like, it's still a little tricky to use an Incinerate user in the Ultra League, but I think it's worth the top like 30. I don't remember Greedent making it on the previous list too. I know Skarmory got bumped up. I think 16 is actually quite high for Skarmory. You need a hundo and you need level 50 and you need best buddy, and it's still, I don't think anywhere, and I'm not sure where it goes to 2500, but I still think you're short there. I know for Pelipper you're definitely short, and same thing with Lantern. So those Pokemon, they need hundos and XLs. So this suddenly became this was always an XL heavy league. It is now a very XL heavy league. So if you want to use those Pokemon, hope you have a hundos and the XLs for them. So Skarmory, I think it's not that it's overrated, but it's just like there's so many things that it can kind of get beat up by. But I don't know. I haven't used the Ultra League Skarmory because I don't have the hundo, so I can't make a full judgment play on it. But Greedent's an interesting one because I have Greedent, and it's one of those Pokemon where it's always been a decent safe swap given how just spammy it is. So the question is, why did Greedent suddenly jump to the top 20 when you look at the rest of this meta? And I mean, I can point to Giratina Altered, you're just walling it because you're normal typing, so you wall Ghost. That's an easy one to look at. But I look at the rest of this list, and I see a couple, many fighter, like counter/fighter fast moves. Poliwrath with counter, the Virizion Cobalion with double kick. And then like Talonflame. Talonflame's a close matchup, but like the mud shots are obviously resisted. Again, mud shots don't do anything anyways. You're just like fast energy generation, but there's a couple flyers on here, so your fast move does nothing. I think it's just because you're truly just so spammy and in the Ultra League so tanky that you probably have just generally safe matchups across the board, no matter what the meta is. So even like, although there are a few fighters, I'm just gonna quickly pull up Greedent on the rankings because that is actually like catch me off guard now that I'm looking at it. I think it's just super safe. It is. It's a. Let me just maximize IVs because that's probably important. I know it will come down to the. It's so good as safe swap. So 16 and 21, like on paper, it's nothing. You get killed by, like I said, Your first three losses are right off the bat: Cobalion, Virizion, Poliwrath, which are like top 20 Pokemon. Registeel with Focus Blast. Like even Shadow Swampert's on here, stuff like that. So you lose a lot of those. But then there are some wins. I already talked about Giratina. Look, oh, Cresselia, you do win because you have Crunch. That makes sense. So Talonflame, you actually do win. So even though your mud shots are resisted, it just like the body slam spam significantly outpaces this. I think they need a full Incinerate to get to the third fly. So you're just going to outpace the Talonflame. So I think you're just like relying on your outpacing. And if you ever get into a situation where you are up on a mud shot, so like I said, the record is 16 and 21 in the even energy, even shield scenario. If you come in as a safe swap and you have one mud shot advantage, that 16 wins jumps to 20 wins, right? So one mud shot advantage just picks up 4 wins in the mid game, and that's kind of what you get with Greedent. You get a lot of not safety because you can get killed by the counter users, but you get a lot of just ability to flip matchups if they don't have a counter user. So teams. So what I'll do with this is go over the teams I use, but if I don't like the teams, I'll tell you what else you can use. And this is one where I used the what else. The reason I put in Poliwrath because I wanted to test it, and I think it is one of the best safe swaps, like one of the best Pokemon in this Ultra League. And so what I was doing with this team was I was pairing it with a Pokemon that could deal with its weaknesses, and its main weaknesses are going to be grass and flyers. So I was like, okay, grass and flyers. Nidoqueen can deal with pretty much all the grass and most of the flyers. I don't think there's a couple Gliscors in here, but you rarely see them. So for the most part, Nidoqueen can deal with that. And then I put in the first time Skunk as the double poison as the safe swap. I probably wouldn't run this team like this. I would actually, if I was running this meta, instead of building a team that Poliwrath can, and you're also weak to Fairy, so that's why the poison also makes sense. But if you are running Poliwrath, I would actually use it as a safe swap in this meta. If you go to the PVPoke rankings, they will give you an option to sort by safe swaps, like so the best switches. And Poliwrath XL is number 2, only behind Shadow Charizard, because I said, again, if you play with Shadow Charizard or you watch my videos, Shadow Charizard does not care about your typings. Even if you get into a water Pokemon, like Blast Burn does 50%. So that's why Shadow Charizard is so good as a safe swap. Giratina Alter, we know, at number 3. Poliwrath is number 2. And that is how I would use Poliwrath. I would actually build a team of 2 balanced Pokemon with Poliwrath as a safe swap. Because I just think that with the counter being so good, with the stab, so great energy generation, great damage, with Icy Wind to cover your flyers, and a buff Skull that has a 50% chance of lowering your opponent's attack. It's just a super, super strong safe Pokemon in this league. So instead of this team, I would actually run just Poliwrath with a combo pair of Pokemon that you think are strong. Suicune, I used Suicune because I wanted to test it out because it got Scald. It was okay. I just called it poor man's Poliwrath, essentially. I don't think there's a point of using it. I do think there is a point of using Giratina and Virizion. They really covered each other's weaknesses really well. Virizion, your main weaknesses are going to be like fire, so like Charge and stuff like that. So Charizard's a bit tricky, but like Giratina should be able to just hang with it and do well against it, because again, Dragon Claw is a good move against Giratina, but it's still like Blast Burn is the better move to use on Charizard, but in Giratina you have to use Dragon Claw, which is not an amazing move to go against, for Charizard to use. So Giratina is pretty good. You are double weak in the back to Fairy, so and Ice. So it depends how many Ice and Fairy you are seeing in the back. So if you're seeing a lot of Ice and Fairy, what you could do is if you want to run the same backline, I would run like a Steel, if you have Registeel or something like that in the front. It does make you double weak to fire, so what would be the best option for a Steel in the front? Like Galarian Stunfisk. Giratina, Verzian, something like that, where Galarian Stunfisk, if you see a fairy, you're going to wall it. If you see a fire, you will be able to outpace with the rock slides. And that is how you cover that weakness there. And the ice, you will hit super effective with the ice with the rock as well. Then I tested Talonflame. And like I said, I think Talonflame, it's good. I'm not sold on it being a top 20 Pokemon because I think Incinerate is just like, you're still for level 50 Pokemon, you're still like not glassy, but for level 50, you're glassy. If Incinerate does hurt, Fly, I do think provides you the ability to like play differently and play better, I think. Covering your weakness, you're weak to water, you're weak to rock. So I did a couple teams for the first thing I did was Cresselia because I said I assumed with Cresselia with Grass Knot would cover those as a safe swap. I also used Licky because Talonflame with Incinerate is going to have problems with Giratina. So that is why I put like Licky in, because you are normal typing, so you resist the licks. You resist the claws and do super effective with the licks and Shadow Ball. So bulky Pokemon in the back. And then I'm like, the problem with this team, with the Cress in there, was Cress and Licky are very, very bulky, but don't grab shields. And that's not what you really want. You want to just be able, if you want to run Talonflame, you want to be able to just kind of like launch a bunch of like flies and hard hitting moves, but your backline doesn't really grab shields. So that's when I switched to Greninja as something that can still kind of deal with Talonflame's weaknesses, but just is a hard hitting Pokemon. And then someone submitted, this is a submitted team with Steelix, and I was like, okay, Steelix, how good or bad are you now? I would suggest you go look at the full analysis. Steelix is worse. Obviously, it's not the worst case scenario being down to the breaking swipe nerf. Where it comes into play is the problem with the 50% chance, and it just comes down to statistics. Why Steelix is still okay, even if you get 0%, even if you never get the breaking swipe nerf, you still have Dragon Tail, which is doing well against like Giratinas, and just general, it's still a hard hitting move. You're bulky AF, so you're super bulky. Shadow Dragon Tails do a decent amount of damage, and then Breaking Swipe still just a Dragon Claw clone, right? It just has a chance to lower the attack. So if you don't lower the attack, what you're doing is you're basically giving up some of those crazy matchups that you would have won in the 2 shield before. Like if you went multiple breaking swipes and landed and got all of the lowering of the attack, you could like beat Swamperts and stuff in the 2 shield. Like it was stupid, right? That's why they nerfed it. So if you don't get any of the breaking swipe nerfs, then you're going to lose those ones for sure. And then some of like I think the mid ones against like some of the spammy Pokemon, I mentioned like Greed and stuff like that before, like they will probably now just be able to like outpace you with the crunches if you don't get the lowering of the attack. It's still a 50% chance. So if you're hitting at that 50% rate, or again, statistics doesn't mean you get it once and you don't get it the next time. It just means like there's a 50% chance you could get this 2, 3, 4 times in a row. It still has the potential to be very, very overpowering. So if you're going to use it, it still has a chance to be overpowering. Just be aware that in some matchups, if you don't land it, you will lose, and then you'll have to adjust from there. So they ran a double water team. One water is poison, so you neutralize the grass there, and you neutralize the grass on the front with the steel. Polyrath is the safe swap. I think it's just a strong team overall because it just has 3, I think, strong Pokemon in this meta. I think Steelix is still good despite the breaking swipe nerf. I think Polyrath, like I said, is one of the best safe swaps. And Tentacruel, I cannot wait to get one. It's very, very bulky XL Tentacruel plus Blizzard, buff Scald plus Blizzard to land on those like Flyers and or Giratinas. Skeldurge, how many times am I going to have to freaking talk? I never thought I'd have to talk about a newly released Pokemon, starting Pokemon, as much as I have talked about Skeldurge and how strong it just is in every freaking meta. It's such a strong Pokemon, and I suggest if you want to go, like, why is this so strong? Go check out my video I just put out yesterday afternoon. I just talked about, I did it like 5 minutes talking about Unova Sunfisk, and then I talked like 7 minutes about Skeledirge and why I went over like everything from its stats to its movesets to why it is such a strong Pokemon without a Community Day move yet. So yeah, Skeledirge is strong. One of the things I did mention is Ghost Fire has 5 weaknesses, which makes it rough. And those 5 weaknesses are very, very prevalent in the Ultra League. 3 of them include Ghost, Dark, and Water. Those are the main 3. It's also weak to Ground and Rock. So how do you cover all of those weaknesses? So I start with Lurantis because between the Water and the Rock, you'll easily cover it with that. And then just, if you haven't used Lurantis, it's so spammy. And then Golisopod, I still think Golisopod, much like I've been kind of touting up Poliwrath, I think Golisopod is one of the best safe swaps in this meta. I run it with Aerial Ace because it is a nice answer to Virizion, and Aerial Ace gives you something to throw at Jellicent, and it gives you something to throw at Giratina that you would not have if you ran X-Scissor and Liquidation. And lastly, Galarian Weezing. I've used the Dragonite Swampert core many, many, many times in Ultra League. I think Dragonite is one of the best. I think is one of the best in Ultra League. I don't care that it's not on the top 20 ranking. Like, I think Dragonite is one of the best Pokemon in Ultra League. Swampert's only weakness is Swampert's good because it only has one weakness in grass. There's not a ton of grass. It can kind of stay in with almost anything, and Dragonite will deal with the grass. This was my first time I finally built up a Galarian Weezing, and I wanted to test it out. And it's pretty friggin' strong. It's got great tank, very spammy. You can run it with Overheat instead of like play. You can run, I think, a combo of any of the movesets. It has Brutal Swing, Play Rough, and Overheat. I think you can run any 2 the way you want. Just it'll all just play differently. So I decided to do Brutal Swing because it's just like a very quicker like bait move, and it's good for coverage. On like ghosts and stuff, and then Play Rough for your fairy, right? So you might as well get that stab Play Rough in there. Just good in any sort of neutral matchup. And the only problem is if you run something like Play Rough Overheat, you're gonna have a really, really, really tough time with like Charizard or any sort of Charizard's. I was gonna say any fire, but any fire, because fire will resist the fairy and the fire. So that is why most people have at least Brutal Swing on it to have some coverage, and then either run Play Rough or they run Overheat. But that is it. So I think most people will probably play Great League. Like, it's Great League, Ultra League, and Master League this week. So I think most people will play Great League. But we're gonna play Ultra League, and you got some battles that you want me to showcase, link in the description. If not, go check out the top Great League teams earlier. And that is it. So good luck this week. I guess today is the 22nd. So Merry Christmas if you celebrate Christmas. I'll be off, but I won't be off. Like, I'll have some videos. I'll definitely have 1 to 2 videos coming from like 26th to the 1st. Some banks, some just general, but I'll do some recordings when I'm away too. So that's it. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.